Hello YouTube. I'll talk to you today about a very interesting subject. To me at least. It has to do with giants. And you know, legends and tales about giants, those people of enormous height, this can be found about many ancient peoples. There are travelers and chronicles who attest to the existence of the giants, but they're much less common than just fables or legends and so forth. That's why the evidence is very valuable when historical personalities talk about such phenomena as giants. According to the records, once many hundreds of years ago, people of this unusual size and height could be found in the northern Urals and Siberia, lands that are had been part of the Russian Empire, Soviet Union, and now Russian Federation. And moreover, these were not isolated cases of physical anomalies like gigantism, which are sometimes found in our time. But there were reports of entire tribes of so-called Russian giants. One of the documentary evidence of the Russian giant belongs to Hamid ibn Fadlan, who in 1921-1922 Common Era visited the king of the Volga Bulgars, together with the embassy of the Baghdad Caliph. Having traveled throughout the lands of ancient Russia. And I mentioned this historical personality before, and his observations of the unusual celestial battles in the sky of the Volga Bulgars in my previous videos, and I'll put a link to it. He was a very interesting and very capable researcher, traveler, and diplomat. Now, the book that was written by Ibn Fadlan is an invaluable source of the history of the pre-Christian Russia, including the Ural Mountains. But the passage we're interested in is usually, people don't talk too much about it. Actually, this book of Ibn Fadlan wasn't that easy to find in Russia in modernity too. It was published in the Tatarstan area of Russia. Many years ago I was looking for it, and that's how I found it, the Russian translation. Anyway, it's a very interesting document, and I told you before that there was a motion picture made years ago about this personality, but of course it was fictitious. Hollywood cannot produce anything more interesting, even if the material is fascinating. Anyway, Ibn Fadlan talked in his writings about a giant who lived in the vicinity of the Bulgarian capital. And we're talking about the Volga Bulgars people, not Bulgaria as we know it today. The Arab traveler told how, while still in Baghdad, he heard from one of the captured Turks that in the headquarters of the Lord of the Bulgarian kingdom there was one captive who was kept in captivity, a man of extremely huge physique. When the embassy arrived to the Volga, Ibn Fadlan asked the king to show them the giant. Well, unfortunately, the giant was killed not so long before the visit of the Arab traveler due to the violent and the evil character that the giant possessed. According to eyewitnesses, from one glance of this gigantic creature, children fainted and pregnant women had miscarriages. The violent giant was caught far in the north, in the country of Visu. Now, according to modern historians, this is the Ves people mentioned in the ancient Chronicles, who lived somewhere in the Russian Pechora region. This giant was captured and he was delivered to the capital of the Volga, Bulgaria. He was held outside the city, chained to a huge tree. And this is where he was finally killed. They strangled him to death. The remains of the giant were shown to Ibn Fadlan. And here's what it says. He's writing, his book said, "And I saw that his head was like a big tub, and now his ribs were like the largest dry fruit branches of palm trees, and in this way the bones of his legs and both of his ulnar bones. And I was amazed at this and left." Incidentally, there is an information relating to the end of the 19th century Russia. At the excavation of one of the cemeteries in the Volga region, but it's somewhat to the south of the places where Ibn Fadlan talks about. Anyway, in the Saratov province, there was a skeleton of a giant man who was discovered during the excavation. Very interesting document, but it's been such a long time. There's not really documentary evidence of this. Now, there is another testimony that's very interesting about such giants. And it's found in the book with the poetic title, "A Gift to the Minds and Sample of Wonders." It belongs to another Arab traveler, scholar and theologian Abu Hamid al-Garnati. More than 100 years after Ibn Fadlan, that means after, 100 years after the 10th century, he also visited the capital of the Volga, Bulgaria, and met there the same giant, but only alive. And he even talked with this giant. Here is what the book says. "And I saw in Bulgar in 530, that would be 1135 to 1136 Common Era, a tall man from the descendants of the Adits, whose height is more than 7 cubits, and he was named Donkey. He took the horse under his arm as a man takes a little lamb, and his strength was such that he broke the horse's shin with his hand and tore the meat and veins like others tearing greenery. And the ruler of the Bulgar made him a special chainmail shirt, which was carried in a wagon, and a helmet for his head, as if a cauldron. When the battle happened, he fought with an oak club, which he held in his hand like a stick. But if he had hit an elephant, he would have killed him. And he was kind, modest. When he met me, he greeted me respectfully, although my head did not reach him to the waist. May Allah have mercy on him." Similar information, by the way, had been preserved in Scandinavian sources. They relate to raids of the Varangians in remote areas of the Russian north. We're talking about the Vikings. Here, those never-tiring rogue explorers have repeatedly encountered tribes of giants. Moreover, both ordinary male giants and tribes consisting exclusively of females, so to speak, Amazonian giantesses or giant women. When they sailed along the shore for a while, they saw that there was a very tall and huge house. They saw the temple was very large and built of white gold and precious stones. They saw that the temple was open. It seemed to them that everything inside shone and sparkled, so that there was not even a shadow anywhere. There they saw a table, what it should be like for a king, covered with expensive material and forced with various precious vessels made of gold and precious stones. 30 giantesses were talking at the table, and the priestess was in the center. They, the Vikings, could not understand whether she was in the form of a person or some other creature. It seemed to all of them that she looked worse than can be expressed in words. After some time, the Danish chronicle Saxon Grammaticus described the same picture. That was about 1208 Common Era, telling about the Viking squadron's voyage across the White Sea. with the difference that here it was not about the temple and the Amazons, but about the cave where the giants lived. Well, look, the Russian North is actually full of tales of giants. Even at the beginning of the 20th century, among the coastal boats sailing to Novaya Zemlya, there was a legend that in one of the coastal caves there are giant human skulls with bare teeth. Well, Novaya Zemlya, as you may know from my other videos, is a heavily militarized area in modern Russia. So the research, I think, is out of the question. For those who are curious enough to go there, I don't think they would reach it. But I've heard a lot of legends. And it's time to speak about the giants of Siberia. Now, Siberian legends about meetings with giants or encounters with giants were collected and recorded by the world-famous archaeologist Alexei Pavlovich Okladnikov, who passed away in 1981. It's interesting that a hunter and a reindeer herder, Nikolai Kurilov, from the lower reaches of the Lena River, told him that a man who hunted Arctic foxes in winter found huge human footprints that led from the sea, out of the sea. It was on the Arctic Ocean shore. The hunter decided to find out where the footprints were taken by land, where they led to. After 2 days of driving around, he saw a mountain in front of him, rising in the middle of the taiga, or boreal forest, like an island. There were especially many traces there. Suddenly a woman appeared. She was a few sazhen high, tall. Now, sazhen, it's an ancient Russian measurement, and it was equal to 7 feet. So she was a few sazhen in size, so you got to figure it out. 7 feet multiplied by what? By 2? 2.5? Now, she took Nikolai by the hand and led him to the house where the giant man lived. And he told the hunter, "It was my fault that I showed my tracks or footprints. Otherwise, you would not have come here. Go back home, just don't tell anyone about what's going on, and I'll help you return. Do not go until I prepare the sled. Come out later." After some time, the giant returned to the house and ordered, "Now you go out." Around them was a continuous fog. There was almost no visibility. The giant put the hunter on a sled, blindfolded him, and said, "When you reach your land, let the dogs go." The hunter took the return trip only one day and without spending the night. So it was probably a day and a night altogether. When the hunter untied his eyes, he saw that he was not being driven by dogs, but by 2 wolves. His own dog sled, loaded to the top, was attached from behind. Arriving home, the hunter released the wolves, and they immediately disappeared. When he opened the load, he saw a mountain of expensive furs on the sled. The fact was that the giant asked this intruder, "Why are you wandering alone along the seashore?" And the man replied that he lived by trapping and by obtaining fur for sale, and that's why, out of the pity, the giant gave him so many furs. Now, before his old age, Nikolai Kurilov did not say anything to anyone, but he told the story only at his death. Many taiga giants have preserved a number of legends among various Siberian peoples. They've been preserved in the legends. That's how I should say it, because I've read a number of legends about different strange phenomena in Siberia and the Far East, and you can find them in my videos. But it's the giants that are of a special interest. There is a belief that the giants were actually attacking hunting campfires and would carry away from burning pieces, so there would be fire. Those giants differ from ordinary people not only in their size and how tall they are, but also in their long, thick eyebrows, or in the fact that they are completely covered with hair. Therefore, the other name is bearded people. Bearded they don't live one by themselves, solitary lifestyles, but they live in whole villages. The shape of their houses is dome-shaped, actually. Inside, they were illuminated, but listen to this, not by stoves, but unknown luminous or radiant stone. So there were strange stones that emitted light, and that's what the giants used for illumination. In many legends, the land of the giant tribe is associated with the island in the Arctic Ocean. In the middle of the 19th century, according to an eyewitness, the following story was recorded. A certain industrialist examined hunting gear on the islands near the Kolyma estuary. There is a snowstorm that caught him and he got lost. He wandered around the icy desert for a long time, and finally the dogs brought him to an unfamiliar village, which consisted of several log huts. Late in the evening, men of enormous size came from the field and began to ask the stranger who he was, where, for what reason, and why he had come here. Had he heard about them before, and finally, had he been seen by whom? So this man kept the industrialist, who told his whole story. They kept him there for 6 weeks under close supervision. They put him in a separate house, and they would not allow him to go away, even for a short distance. And he often heard the ringing of a bell, from which he decided, from hearing the bell, from the sound, he thought that he came to the monastery of the old believers. That's a Russian religious sect, dissidents who were actually persecuted by the czars, and they had not an easy life because the way they view Russian Eastern Orthodox Christianity, divergent from the main church. Anyway, finally these people agreed to let the industrialist go, but they took an oath from him to remain silent about everything that he saw and heard. Then they blindfolded him, led him out of the village, and led him very far away. Upon parting, they presented a large number of white foxes and red foxes first to him. Now, about the same time, the Verkhoyansk, it's a town, police officer informed the Irkutsk, that's a large city in Siberia, Bishop Veniamin, that there is an island of unknown geography in the Arctic Ocean. In good and clear weather, it seems to point from the island of New Siberia to the northeast. That seems to be where it's located. And there are residents on this island. They are called bearded men because they say the people have completely overgrown with hair. With them, very rarely and under pain of death are wild Chukchi people who transmit this secret to those Chukchi who are paying Yasako tribute, let's say more civilized. And those who pay the tribute, in turn, also in secret, they talk about everything they hear to the Russians. And that's how they found out about this strange settlement, strange island, and strange people. Popular legend said that bearded people on the islands of the Arctic Ocean lived a long time ago, and that some bishop with his retinue was brought there and washed ashore. I guess there was a shipwreck. It was as if he had heard the sounds of bells on that island, but the bearded man would not allow him into into their houses. They only traded on the shore, and they do not allow strangers to come to their islands. There are many interesting legends about vanishing islands and those that disappeared or reappear in the Arctic oceans. And of course, I promise you, I'll tell you more about the Russian Arctic. I just wanted to let you know how it ties in with the legends of the so-called giants. In addition, at the end of the 20th century, an old Kalema man, after he heard about the Sidov's expedition to the North Pole, that's a historical event, he said, well, it means that they will come to the people in the houses with the golden roofs, hinting at the mysterious islanders about whom the Russian legends speak and the indigenous people of the Arctic Ocean know. Well, we'll look for more legends. This is a fascinating territory, the Arctic Ocean of Russia. And I've told you a number of stories about UFOs and USOs. And I'll tell you more. And hopefully, as the world opens up, we'll find out about unusual events that took place there, and unusual people, and unusual settlements, and legends that talk about the so-called iron fish, that, those legends go back thousands of years. But it's the giants and other unusual beings from the area that are really fascinating. And I think scientists will find more proof as the time goes by. I thank you for your attention, and I hope to bring you more stories soon. And I do ask that you support me. There are links. And stay tuned. Thank you.